Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the long anticipated Stephen King film adaptation of The Dark Tower. This film has been rumored for years, has been in development hell for years. At one point, Ron Howard was going to direct this film, then that got delayed. Then he dropped out of the directing position. We got a new director. Ron Howard was still producing, like he did for this film. Just so many different changes and directions and everything for this movie has just been considered over the years, and just it's been on the shelf, and it's been in so many different positions over the course of the years. But finally it's here. We finally get to see the long anticipated favorite series from Stephen King, The Dark Tower. It's finally here, and I'm going to review it for you today. So in this movie, you guys, at least in the movie, I don't know about the books, but it's supposed to happen after all the books have happened. So this is at some point in time on that timeline after all the books are finished. At least that's what I've been told. And it's about a young boy who has these dreams at night. Um, he dreams about this place called Midworld that has a character called the Gunslinger and a character called the Man in Black. And they're both at war with each other because they're both trying to go after something called the Dark Tower, which is something that their world, Midworld, and our world, Earth, are linked together by. They're linked together by this thing called the Dark Tower, which is very much as the title suggests, a dark tower that links our world with theirs. And if anything were to happen to the Dark Tower, if it were to get destroyed, if it were to be preserved or in the hands of somebody bad, somebody evil, that could also harm us as well. So basically, long story short, if something happens to the Dark Tower, our world and Midworld are both in trouble. This could cause chaos. This could cause a true apocalypse of epic proportions. So do not destroy the Dark Tower. That could do very, very bad things. So basically, this boy, after dreaming all this, after learning about these characters in his dreams, he does get an opportunity at one point to go to Midworld to meet the Gunslinger, to unfortunately meet the Man in Black as well, who wants to use this boy for bad things. Um, he has to try to decide which side he was going to be on. Is he going to help the Gunslinger preserve the Dark Tower to make sure that it's in the right hands and supervised by the right people? Obviously he's not going to go over to the Man in Black because he wants to do bad things. He's willing to kill people. He's willing to harm this boy's family just to get what he wants. So basically, it's good versus evil, and both our world and Midworld trying to decide what to do with this Dark Tower. How can the good guys supervise it? How could the bad guys supervise it? How exactly can Midworld and reality survive and make sure that the Dark Tower doesn't get into the wrong hands and that it does not get destroyed? So overall, guys, I like The Dark Tower. I wasn't absolutely in love with this movie. I certainly think there was things they could have done with this movie to make it a better film, but I enjoyed the movie. I don't think it's quite as bad as a lot of these negative reviews are making this film out to be. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. When I really liked something, I really, really liked something, and when I didn't like something, I really didn't like something. So it's one of those movies where there's things about it you're really going to like, and there's probably going to be things about this film that you're really not going to like. And keep in mind, I'd never read the Dark Tower book, so I went into this film as a Stephen King fan. I've obviously read a lot of his other books, have seen a lot of films that are also based off his other books as well. So I was able to understand kind of how Dark Tower ties into all those other books. So I just kind of went in as a blind Stephen King fan of other source material, not specifically this one, and just to kind of see if I would like the movie or not. So overall, from my positives and negatives of the Dark Tower, I do think this is an intriguing world. I think we definitely get. I definitely felt like it was in the presence of a Stephen King story for sure, and I do like how this world is very intriguing to learn about. I liked learning about the rules of this world, kind of what the characters were up to, what this Gunslinger character was up to, what the Man in Black was up to, how someone from the outside world, like this little boy, how they would view this mid-world and how they would view preserving the Dark Tower and things like that. So it's a very intriguing world to learn about. So I'm definitely glad that they made this world intriguing to learn about in this movie. I also think the Dark Tower had a unique sense of action. I like how it wasn't just the really cool action scenes or the really cool use of guns from the Gunslinger or the really cool use of Man in Black's sorcery powers to get what he wants. I do like how whenever like the Gunslinger was in action, for example, and he really had to focus on something, to make sure that his aim was good, that he's firing with his heart and not with just his hand or the way that he's seeing things. I like how this film zones in, makes it more personable. It makes it about what this character is currently up to. So it's a very unique sense of action. And not only did they do this with the gunslinger and with this little boy, they even did this with the man in black as well, whenever a scene is focusing on what he's up to. So it made it very unique to the characters that we're watching and what they're up to, and kind of how they're experiencing this whole thing as the film plays out. And that goes into my next positive of the movie. I like the performances of this film. Idris Elba was great as the gunslinger. Matthew McConaughey is great as the man in black. And I like this little boy that they found who went into Midworld and kind of was the audience character of figuring out what exactly this midworld is, and kind of how the Dark Tower links into this world and to our reality. So overall, I really enjoyed the performances. I just was really intrigued about learning about these characters, and I thought everybody involved did a good job making sure that their performances were top notch for this movie. I also like the overall chemistry between the gunslinger and Man in Black. I definitely felt like this film had a long history with these characters that definitely goes back to the books, and why I think this movie is meant to take place after all the books happen. So I like how they're able to establish how these characters kind of knew each other for a long time, kind of how there's things that they not really like about each other, but things that they're aware about with each other, is there's those things that they really, really don't like about each other. So whenever they're fighting or having an argument or trying to get their way, how they're always taking advantage of that one thing that kind of always bothers them as far as the two of them have known each other. So I like the chemistry behind the gunslinger and the man in black in this movie. I like all the other nods and references to Stephen King novels in this movie. The ones that I was able to catch were Christine, Misery, Children of the Corn, The Shawshank Redemption was referenced at one point, The Shining was referenced at another point in time. So I like all the little nods and references. Some people who really don't are as familiar with Stephen King's work might not be able to spot these right away, but if you have seen a lot of his movies, have read a lot of his books, you might be able to catch all the nods and references that they make to his work. They reference Stephen King's It at one point, you know, the one with the Pennywise clown. So they do a lot of nods and references to his books, and I think they do a very good, clever job with it. This is also a great visual movie. I like how the visuals weren't too dark, but they weren't too happy. I liked how there was a difference between scenes that were in reality, scenes that were in Midworld. Midworld was more a unique twist on our reality. You know, in Midworld, there's everything you would see in reality, except there's creatures and, you know, the good guys, bad guys. If you have a good skill, you know, you'll find good company. If you're not so skilled, you probably won't be in the greatest of company in this world. So I like how they were able to kind of establish a visual style both within our reality and within the Midworld scenes. And I also like the film's messages about keeping the world good, how if everybody's good, if everybody does the right thing, we can make sure that the world continues whether there is a Dark Tower or not. Because if we're all evil and at each other's throats and mad at each other all the time, that's not a healthy world to live in. So I like how the Dark Tower has the approach of, if we keep the world good, no matter what happens to, you know, something like a Dark Tower or a Midworld or our reality, if we keep the world good, if we're all positive and moving forward in the right way, that's the best way we can move forward as a society, rather than always hating each other for whatever reason. For my negatives, though, of the Dark Tower, there are a lot of several unexplained story and character elements. There's just so many scenes that really don't explain why certain characters don't like each other, why certain characters are the way they are. You know, why did the Dark Tower get there? You know, how did it get there? How did Idris Elba become a gunslinger? What exactly does someone have to do to become a gunslinger? There's things like that that the film never attempts to explain, that I wish really could have been explained more in this movie. I also thought this film was overall, it felt too casual. I really felt like nothing was really super at stake. It never really felt as tense as I was hoping for. It just had a very casual, you kind of know where everything's going to go kind of vibe. So I thought the overall tone was just a little too casual for its own good. I also thought that this film was too short. This film is only about 96 minutes long, I think, and I don't even think it's that long. And for being a film that's, take place after several books and has such a long history of things that have happened within this world, I really do think that the running time they went with is a little too short. I think with a longer running time, they could have fixed a lot of the problems I mentioned before and after this comment here. I really think the runtime they went with is just a little too short for this movie. It really needed more time to develop characters and develop storyline elements and to answer all the unanswered questions that I'm sure myself and a lot of other people are going to have about this movie. There's also a lot of undefined and invincible characters here, specifically with Matthew McConaughey's Man in Black character. There's certain things he does that I could be able to tell you what he does as a character, but it's never quite defined. There's never quite a limitation with what he can do. As far as I'm concerned, his character is pretty much invincible. He can get characters to be hypnotized to do whatever he wants. He can teleport anywhere. It even gets to the point where it's like, why does he even have people working for him? He basically can do everything himself. So there's just answers and questions like this that I really could not get behind just because I just had so many questions on my mind as to why it's playing out the way it is. It also has a very sloppy third act. It's one of those third acts where they're not quite sure if there's going to be the one and only Dark Tower movie. Is there going to be more? So they set it up in such a way where it could technically be the end, but there possibly and has to be more than what was shown here because the way that they end it does feel very sloppy and unsure of itself, and it kind of goes against a lot of the things you see earlier on in the movie, specifically with characters that have a lot of abilities like the Man in Black. So I thought the overall third act was very sloppy in this movie. I also thought this film had a lot of forgettable characters. There's just a lot of characters in this movie where, when you're looking back at the film and looking back at all the scenes that happen, there's just characters that you're going to forget about by the time the end credits start rolling. It's just forgettable. You just kind of forget why that certain character's in the movie. I would say Jackie Earle Haley's character alone is just a servant for the bad guy. I really didn't understand why he specifically had to be in this movie. The film never gave him a specific reason. So overall, I'm going to give The Dark Tower an 8.5 out of 10. When it works well, it really works well. And when it doesn't work well, it really doesn't work well. So 8.5 out of 10. I like it enough to recommend the movie. I don't think it'll make it to my top 10 best of the year list. I don't think I enjoyed it that much. I enjoyed The Dark Tower. I do recommend it if you are a Stephen King fan. If the film trailers really didn't intrigue you that much, you can probably skip this one. But like I said, if you're a big Stephen King fan like I am, I'd be sure to give this one a view.